Welcome to our Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Couldn't be prettier outside the windows of the St. Francis Yacht Club. It's always pretty out these windows, but it looks particularly pretty today. Let's see, a little bit about future speakers. So those of you who know that Paul Caird was became the first sailor named to the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame are going to be pleased to know that he'll be coming to give a little talk about the whole process on May 27th. So you want to come by and listen to Paul. Paul has won the Round the World race, taken second in the Round the World race, has been part of 7 America's Cup efforts, a couple with me and several others. And he's been, when I was competing on Bill Koch's team, Caird showed incredible speed with a slower boat that had for El Moro di Venezia. He's been a Rolex Yachtsman of the Year, and he's inducted into the America's Cup Hall of Fame, the Sailing Hall of Fame. And the Bay Area has finally decided sailing is worthy of a slot to put a sailor in, so Paul became the first sailor. So we're all real proud. On May 20th, Steve Tashia, chairman of the America's Cup Hall of Fame Selection Committee, he'll be here to talk all about that. On May 13, Jack Griffith, who's the editor of Cup Experience, he'll be here to talk all about the new America's Cup 75s, one of which flipped a couple weeks ago down in New Zealand. Don Martin, the Commodore of the Single-Handed Sailing Society, will be by to talk about the biggest sailboat race in America, which is the Three Bridge Fiasco, their Three Bridge Fiasco. Sigel Coe will be here for Baykeeper. Then also Brian Ackerman will be here from the Moss Landing Labs down the coast. And we'll also hear from Kevin Kelly. He's a state-of-the-art bottom washing technologist, call it that. And you'll see that nowadays, the old days you'd say wash the bottom. Now they give you a video of your bottom, what it looks like. They have special ways of washing the bottom so that nothing at all is on it. Jim Hancock will be here, the founder of the Sailing Science Center. And a couple weeks from now, Chuck Adams, seated here. Raise your hand, Chuck. Chuck Adams, one-time partial owner of the Penguins, the Pittsburgh Penguins, will be here to talk all about a book he's written on the making of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is wonderful. And next week, Will Stokely, who can't be here this week because he's racing in the Clipper Around the World race. He'll be here to talk about how you can also race in one of the legs of the Clipper Around the World race. Now, a little bit about our speaker today. Imagine that it's, the 1980s, the late 80s, and the Soviet Union is falling apart, and you live in Kazakhstan, and your dad works for the Russian Special Forces. Holy cow! This is a nervous way to wake up, to grow up. So our hero comes with his family in 1990 to Sacramento, goes to school there, excels right away in physical sports. Does real well in the wrestling team, on a local level, on a regional level, on a national level, and even tours internationally, going to Japan as a high school wrestler. In 2003, he joins the Army, and right away they see his prowess, so they move him to the Airborne Division, and then they move him from Airborne into Special Forces, where he becomes a Special Ops combat soldier. 3 tours to the Middle East, to Iraq and Afghanistan, 125 combat missions, brings back dozens of high-value targets, which is not easy, as Mikhail will tell you, dropping in the middle of the night down a rope about this big in a highly guarded target. That's the easy part, because by the time you want to leave, there's a little bit of a house party waiting for your departure. He'll talk a little bit about that. But that was not enough for Mikhail. He comes back from the services, And just before he leaves, he gets put into the Ranger competition of all the special forces. The Navy SEALs compete with the Army Rangers in this big nationwide competition, and he and his partner win Ranger 1 competition, which I'll ask about, you'll hear about. And then he comes back to the States, joins the police department down the peninsula, and then starts helping youth, and still realizes he misses the camaraderie he felt when he was in these high-risk situations in the military, and he knows he's not alone, so he founds Ranger Road. After you leave part of your body on the battlefield, how do you get back to that incredibly intense feeling of camaraderie and mission and purpose that you once shared with your colleagues? And so Ranger Road provides veterans with that same experience. They jump out of planes, they dive deep underwater, and now they do the most scary thing. They go racing on sailboat races with me. So they've actually started Ranger Road Sailing. We'll ask them all about that. It's a wonderful thing. We have a guy with a carbon fiber leg who's on the foredeck of an IOD. Try that. Who's been on the foredeck of an IOD? What are the lifelines? Where are those lifelines on the foredeck on an IOD? Anyway, so I don't think we could have a more compelling example of modern U.S. military might and also sense of purpose than our speaker today, my friend Mikhail Venikov.
Well, thank you very much, Ron. How are you guys doing today? Is it okay if I take the mic out? So a little bit about me. Like Ron had mentioned, let me start with this. Never sailed before meeting Ron and some of the members here at St. Francis. My thought process with sailing was flip-flops, shorts, maybe a tank top, maybe no shirt, and leisurely hanging out. Rudely was I awakened. So I was introduced to Ron and Mark and some of the young men here, but went on a sailing trip. We raced with Ron, and it was cold, it was wet. I have frost nip in my fingers and my toes from Ranger School, and I was cold, miserable. Ron's yelling at me, telling me what to do, telling me to. The terminology, nothing was nothing I knew, but you know, believe it or not, it is very, very similar to military, and in the sense of being put into situations that you may not expect, and how you overcome those situations, how you learn from them and become a better person, become a better leader is what I learned within sailing from Ron, from Mark, and other members that I've sailed with. So like Ron mentioned, I immigrated to America when I was a little kid. Not going to talk too much about myself, but I physically excelled in a lot of things that I've done, whether it was wrestling, the military, the Best Ranger competition. I later got into mixed martial arts. Got a broken nose, as you guys can see, numerous times. I fought professionally. I have 6 professional fights. And I enjoy competition. I enjoy pushing myself. And again, learning from those experiences. Starting Ranger Road was something, not to get too emotional with you guys, but close to me, because I like to stay busy, and being busy, staying active and around good people is what helps not only me, but a lot of individuals like yourselves, but also veterans. When you're in that team building environment, camaraderie, and somebody having your back is very important and crucial. And when coming out of the military, some of us, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to get involved within the community and what maybe our calling is. And so while I was working San Mateo Police Department, I was on the SWAT team, and I suffered an injury. I had surgery done, and during that lag time, I had some time to think about some of the stuff that's going on, maybe reminisce a little bit. And I received after coming out of the military, received a lot of emails, text messages, and social media questions about my transition out of the military, from being in Ranger Battalion, excelling there, and then coming out of the military and getting in law enforcement and getting married and living a quote-unquote normal life. I didn't really realize what I was doing, but not thinking about what I was doing, it opened my eyes to how I can help individuals. And that's surrounding yourself with good people, staying busy and active. So a lot of guys that I served with would get out of the military, substance abuse, alcohol, not knowing where to start and what to do was a major issue. And a lot of the guys would ask me, hey man, what are you doing differently that's helped you that we're missing? And I thought about that. What was it? And that's how Ranger Road started. Ranger Road started with the idea of bringing good folks together, veterans, civilians, and participating in events such as team building environments, such as skydiving, scuba diving, extreme sports, and to be able to hang out, have a good time, but talk about your experiences and find out what it is that's hurting us, or maybe we're lagging. A lot of us vets here within Ranger Road, and just vets in general, I think most of us men, we have a hard time admitting that we need help. We're not going to raise our hand and say we need some help. And so that's how Ranger Road helps. We are able to bring folks in together and have a good time, and then we're able to maybe not weed out, but separate individuals that need specific help, and we focus on those individuals and help them and push them in the right direction. So the mission of Ranger Road is to bring veterans together for physical and emotional wellness through extraordinary experiences by empowering the transition to their next chapter in life. And whether you're an old individual, a young individual, a male or female, we work with all veterans within that have served in the military and came out and are struggling. A little bit about Ranger Road. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We pride ourselves in assisting veterans, no matter where you served, what years you served, how young you are, how old you are, what type of disability you have. We focus on everybody, and the idea is to assist veterans getting onto the next chapter in their life. Everybody within Ranger Road is a volunteer. We're all volunteers, and 100% of what goes into Ranger Road goes back out to our veterans to assist them and transitioning out of into the next chapter of their life. We do this through MMA training, mountain biking, skydiving, scuba diving, racing vehicles, and now a newer program that we just started is sailing. And all of the events and programs that we run are adaptive capable. What that means is some of us are amputees, some of us are paralyzed, some of us are suffering other underlying difficulties. And so we, even our race car is adaptive capable, which means that if you are paralyzed or an amputee, you're able to race the car. Same thing with sailing. Some part of sailing, leisurely sailing versus racing sailing, and scuba diving, and I'll get into that a little bit more as we move forward. One of our biggest events is the Freedom Jump. It's a skydiving event, which we bring in veterans from all over America, and we do this out of Davis Drop Zone. And we bring the vets in, give them the opportunity to skydive. And here's a short little video about the Freedom Jump. No sound, but basically what it is we, if you're disabled, what together have a good time by skydiving. Some tank crushes. We get tanks out here crushing some cars, helicopter, Huey flights. We have a jump house for kids.
One of my buddies asked me if I'd be interested in jumping out of a plane. This was like 2 weeks before the event. My background is I was in 82nd Airborne Division for 11 years. After I got hurt, I never thought I'd jump again. And 3 years fast forward, here I am. Ranger Road is sponsoring me to jump on my own and getting my license. And here I am jumping solo now. I'm on my 12th solo jump right now. It's liberating.
I'm a vet myself. I served in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. A lot of vets that are my friends came out of the military with difficulties, whether it be PTSD or various types of disabilities, limb loss, and a lot of them have a hard time coming out of the military and adjusting to normal life. And they have a hard time because while you're in the military, you are used to a camaraderie, the brotherhood that you have serving overseas and, you know, especially in combat. And so we miss that coming out. So that's how Ranger Road was born. We're basically that first step for a lot of veterans to get them going in the right direction. Through the fun events and programs that we put together, we've developed that relationship, that trust, and then they open up and tell us what other needs that they are maybe lacking or what they need help in. So that's the Freedom Jump. It's a big event. We probably have about 1,000 people that show up. And what we always encourage is inviting the civilian community to come together, and we try to bridge the gap from veterans to civilians. Sometimes us veterans, we stick with each other, and we don't know if a civilian will understand our difficulties or understand our thought process. And what we do through these events is we try to bridge that gap by inviting civilians to come out, to volunteer, to participate, learn a little bit about each other, and, you know, friendships are born, and we're able to bridge that gap and better help understand one another. Another program that we do is Ranger Road Skydiving. Skydiving is part of what happens within the Freedom Jump, but what we do is we try to single out individuals that want to get certified in skydiving, whether you have a disability or not, and we give them the opportunity to skydive. Another program that we have is Ranger Road Scuba. Ranger Road Scuba is run by Josh Hotaling. Josh Hotaling is a double amputee Marine. He lives and breathes scuba diving. He likes a lot of things, but scuba diving is his baby. He always talks about water being an equalizer. He is a high amputee on one side, and so walking is very difficult for him. And so what he learned is when he's scuba diving, he's able to feel quote-unquote normal. And so what we do with scuba diving is we bring in veterans with disabilities and give them the opportunity to get scuba certified and then take them out to Florida or other warmer areas, not like here in the Sacramento area, but a little bit warmer, clearer water, and have them enjoying the process. Another event that we do, or a program, is Ranger Road Motors, like I mentioned previously. This here is Jordan. Jordan is a former EOD guy. He was shot in the head, and as you can see, he's missing his right leg, but his whole right side is actually paralyzed. He is a good example of individuals not ever giving up and always pushing forward. And he thought of the process of, hey, I want to race. I've always liked to race. Let's put a car together that's adaptive capable and get guys behind the steering wheel. And so we have veterans that are paralyzed and amputees, and everybody's able to participate within this race. We do the 24 Hours of Lemons, and it's a 2-day race, and so we have 5 to 6 drivers per day, and we assist them. Our volunteers come out, we get them out of the car, in the car safely, and they're racing. We last year we were racing at Sonoma, and Jay Leno was there, and he actually happened to clip our car. It's a blessing in disguise, and so we were able to get introduced to Jay. Jay jumped on board and helped us out with our program, and we were on Jay Leno's garage and had some exposure through that. So it was very, very cool experience. Another program that we do is Ranger Road Warrior Swim. It's a swimming program where, like I mentioned before, water is an equalizer. Some of the veterans that have difficulty moving around enjoy this program because they're able to not only exercise but feel free doing it in a pool. Operation Gut Check. Operation Gut Check, I'm trying to go through these so I get you guys informed a little bit. Operation Gut Check is a Spartan race, and what we do is we bring in veterans and civilians like yourselves. You're more than welcome to sign up. And what we do is we take approximately 10 able bodies like myself and individuals that are here, and we assign the able-bodied individuals to a disabled veteran. And the objective is to help that disabled veteran get across the finish line. You guys can see we're carrying the gentleman that's paralyzed in a litter carry, or pulling him up the hill with the wheelchair. And all of these events that we do and put together is geared towards assisting one another, assisting our veterans. But believe it or not, it also helps us. It helps us. It feels great when we're able to lend a hand, get a little dirty. But at the end of the day, you know, the veteran will come up to you and tell you, thank you very much. I couldn't have done it without you, and that means a lot. Another newest program that we have is Ranger Road Sailing. Ranger Road Sailing, like I mentioned, is very new. We'll be able to ask some questions to Harp. Harp is the mastermind behind Ranger Road Sailing. I'll show you guys a quick little video clip. Run, didn't work when I pressed on it. What we did is we combined Ranger Road Sailing, should be right there, Ranger Road Sailing with skydiving, and we had the opportunity to go out to the Stag Cruise last year. And with some of our veteran skydivers, we had the opportunity to jump the American flag onto Tinsley Island. Phenomenal experience, phenomenal. Yep. Nope, next one. That's it. Here's a short little clip about that. Ronnie it didn't pop up.
Eric? Ready, buddies? I can't see it on the screen yet.
So we had a group of veterans jump the American flag from a helicopter. A lot of timing and coordination, and a lot goes behind getting something like that done. And when the flag lands, some of our disabled veterans were able to catch the flag, fold it up, and present it to the Commodore. Phenomenal experience, phenomenal opportunity for us to be able to do that.
Come here and show me, Eric. Keep talking.
Yep. Some of the things that we're working on currently are expanding our programs. We're currently in Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. We provide various adaptive training there to include boxing and fitness, getting folks out of the hospital environment and kind of into a gym and breathing the fresh air and being able to push their limits a little bit. That's been a very successful program that we've had, and we were fortunate. How do I get the video? Okay. Project moving forward is that project that I just mentioned in Walter Reed. You got guys that are in wheelchairs or missing various limbs, having the opportunity to train. And again, I use that word "feel normal," but it's relevant here, and they love it. It's a good experience, and with the success that we've had there, the hospital in San Antonio, Military Hospital, BAMC, reached out to us. I flew out there a couple months back, and we're working on expanding that program into San Antonio Hospital as well.
Ranger Road is a unique organization specialized.
Additionally, what we're doing is our Scuba program has had a lot of success here in Sacramento, and we're working on bringing that program into Walter Reed and other military hospitals to get other disabled veterans the opportunity to scuba dive and get certified to be able to continue the scuba diving. As I mentioned previously, the sailing program is very new, but the idea behind it is we're going to have two different parts to that. What Harp is going to do is we're going to have the leisurely sailing for individuals that are disabled to the point where they may not be able to actually physically race. I've experienced it myself through Ron, and it is definitely not easy. And so having two types of sailing opportunities, whether it be leisure sailing or racing, is what we're working on with Ron's help. A lot of our veterans, what we try to do is give back, whether it be visiting other disabled individuals or individuals that got hurt at the hospital, or we also do, what we like to do is give some leadership opportunities to our veterans. Veterans that want to lead, want to take on a program, especially something that they have maybe not a calling for, but a desire to teach others. Like, for example, Harp likes to sail. And so we like to put somebody in charge of that program that has experience, a little bit of experience, and willing to help others. And every program that we have is led by a veteran with various types of disabilities. Like I mentioned, the motors is Jordan, who got shot in the head. Scuba program is led by a Marine who's double amputee, and the list goes on. All of our programs are run by individuals that have maybe suffered some sort of disability and are now have gone through Ranger Road programs and are now leading the programs and giving back. That's very important. Like I mentioned before, when you get involved and give back, it makes you feel good. And same thing with our vets. We also wanted to make it known, very important to us, that we work with veterans of all ages. Grandpa Rudy here, I spoke about him previously. He was 105 years old last year. He wanted to skydive with us. He lives by himself, drives a car, phenomenal young man. And he did not skydive with us, but he did come out. He had a good time. And again, very, very elderly gentleman, but wanting to participate, want that feeling of camaraderie and wanting to be part of a team building environment. It's very, very important. And then back down to the little kids. We have this here is from our recent quail and pig hunt, and bringing kids out to be able to help Dad. Dad here was injured. I met him at Wall Street Hospital, and he's recovered. And so bringing them out with the kids and participating, hanging out, and having a good time is very important in the process of recovery and getting back to work and whatever it is that they have going on. Growing. So Ranger Road is we're victims of our own success. The idea was to start small, maybe do a couple events a year, and that changed the first year, changed right away. And the reason being is because, there are a lot of organizations out there that do give back and do help. But the things that we do within the adaptive community is a little bit different. And what I mean by different is we try to bring in veterans to be able to participate, and then putting them in leadership positions is very crucial in, like I mentioned, the recovery process. We have events that we put together, and we have a limited amount of individuals that we can sponsor for each event. And sometimes we do have to tell veterans, hey, next time you can sign up for the next program, just because we're not able to fund every single event. But we are growing, and like I mentioned, from Walter Reed to BAMC in San Antonio, and the list goes on. We're trying to expand with control. As I mentioned previously, Ranger Road is prides ourselves in working with volunteers only, and what that does is it helps us to stretch our dollar. Every dollar that goes into Ranger Road goes back out to our programs, events, and what we coordinate and schedule for our veteran community. We have zero paid staff, and we pride ourselves in that just because we want to assist as many veterans as we possibly can, and this helps us achieve that goal. Some of the ways that maybe if you guys are asking how you can help, volunteer work is huge. If you're interested in maybe getting a little dirty or coming out and supporting some of the events and programs that we have going on, we are always looking for volunteers to participate. We, as you can see here on the flyers here, we were able to partner with the CFC in our Promise campaign, which is allows us to receive federal donations, as well as Amazon Smile is a big part of Ranger Road. Anytime you're purchasing anything through Amazon, if you're using Amazon Smile, Amazon donates a certain percentage to a Ranger Road. And I wanted to finish with this video here. This is a Veterans Day video. Jordan talks a little bit about his injuries. Jordan is the gentleman that I mentioned who took a round to the head. and now overcoming those difficulties and being able to move forward. See if this works. Nope. There it is. Good.
I remember this is the scariest moment of my life was when I woke up from the coma. The last thing I remember was being in a gunfight, and here I am waking up in a hospital. December 16th, 2011, while conducting operations in Afghanistan. And these people are trying to kill you, actively trying to kill you. But you're not scared because this team that you've been with for months, training and preparing for, are with you. And you trust them more than you trust anybody else in the world. I was shot through the head, 30 feet up on a wall. The bullet hit through my front of my helmet, went through my head, and out through the back of my helmet. And then I was able to come back on target and put down the target. Took a 30-foot fall once the adrenaline wore off. After eating the after action, I was pulling the gauze out, I was fighting them, I was in the helicopter, cussing and screaming. I wanted to go back and fight. My medic, Robert Moreno, kept his hand on my head, wouldn't let me bleed out. I've come to learn that he did crazy things just to keep me alive, and I owe him my life. And the last he saw me was when he let go of my head and I was heading into surgery. From his hands to my surgeon's hands, directly, from my medic to the surgeon's hands. So even though my leg is the first thing that you notice of me if I'm walking around, I got shot through the head. It has nothing to do with my leg. I basically walk around on a prosthetic foot anyway, so I can't move my foot. I can't feel it. Hurts like heck. Cut it off. I have a prosthetic now. I get around better on this now than I did before. I can keep up with my kids. I can ride a bike again. I love my life and I'm happy. But I can't shake your hand with my right arm. I'll fist bump and we're good to go. So Ranger Road, we had a pig hunt in Georgia because we're all networked together. And he was a ranger and I was deployed with rangers. Mikhail was a ranger. Robert Moreno, the medic, was able to come out on the pig hunt with us. Brought his son, who he had told, my story about. And we were able to reunite after 5 years. So, and I could give him a hug. I could thank him. You saved my life. Thank you. My son still has a dad. My new daughters are here because of you. That was one of the coolest moments I've ever been able to experience, probably ever will. I will tell that story to my grandkids, and my grandkids will share that story. And Robert Moreno, my medic, will be idolized and forever remembered in my family. And
So that's Jordan. What he's mentioning about Robert Moreno was a medic in 3rd Ranger Battalion when he was shot. He didn't know what happened, but his life was saved by the response of Robert Moreno. And so when we do an annual pig hunt in Georgia every year, and Jordan was telling me, Mikhail, you're a ranger, you're the best ranger. Find Moreno. I want to meet him, because he knew his name, but he doesn't actually remember him. Obviously because he was shot. And so I reached out to my contacts and I found Robert Moreno, and so we brought him and his son to Georgia, and they were able to meet. And sorry guys. And so it was a very emotional experience. Most of us don't really like to tear up or get all mushy, but those are the types of events that go a long way, because you're able to, for me personally, I felt good being able to bring Moreno together with Jordan, and Jordan had the opportunity to see the man that saved his life. So things like that, and individuals that are volunteering are able to participate in that and help out, and it really truly does go a long way. Sometimes those little things like that go a very, very long way in assisting individuals that truly do need help. They may not raise their hand and say, I want help or I need it, but we're able to talk to them and single out those that need some help. Thank you guys very much for listening. I appreciate your time.
Welcome again. Hello, Bobby. Welcome again. Bob Sky. Hello, Bob. Okay, Bob Sky. Yes, Bob. Here we go. Welcome again to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from St. Francis Yacht Club. Our speaker today is Mikhail Venikov, an Army Ranger who served in 120 combat missions, and after all that came back and founded Ranger Road, a nonprofit organization dedicated to giving GIs the experience of camaraderie and intense, basically danger that they faced back when they were bonding as a team. So I'm going to ask Mikhail questions, and then I'm also going to ask each of the other members of Ranger Road who are here to represent the association. And we're going to have from the Navy League, Angus Blackwood. Angus, hold your hand up. He'll have mics, so if you have a question from the audience, we'd like lots of questions from the audience. And right off the bat, I want to acknowledge one of the people who's putting together Ranger Road Sailing. He's also a main sheet tribber on Youngster, Mark Lambros. Thanks very much, Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
Mark has found a couple of boats to give Ranger Road. People donate boats for good causes, and Mark has got a couple of boats and basically putting these guys on our boat and other boats. So let's see, right off the bat, I want to ask, essentially, I want to ask about a dangerous firefight. You lost a leg. Tell us a little bit. First of all, I want to go through the rank. Give us your name and rank as you come across, so that as you were in the service, so everybody knows this.
Yeah, I served with the 2nd Ranger Battalion out of Fort Lewis, Washington. Was that team leader and acting squad leader on our last deployment.
Name and rank. So Mikhail Venikov. Yep.
Sergeant Mikhail Venikov.
Perfect. There we go.
My name is Ben Bassetti. I was a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, served with 3rd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion from 2009 to 2013, stationed out in 29 Palms. I don't know if y'all know where that is. It's the middle of the Mojave Desert, so it's pretty god-awful. Did 2 combat deployments to Helmand Province, and that's probably about as much as I can sum that. Was everything right?
Yep. Good.
I'm only going to do name and rank because I've been yelled at by Ron several times in the sailboat, so I'm starting to follow orders. Full name is Rahul Harpalani, but that's a lot of syllables, so I go by Harp, significantly more efficient, and I was a captain in the U.S. Army.
Thank you, Harp. Let's see, I want to talk a little bit about, Harp has raced on Youngster. He's done a great job on the foredeck. He's learning the foredeck well. Talk to us about the accident, the firefight, the event where you lost your leg.
Sure.
What country, where was it?
In 2010, I was in northeast Afghanistan in a province called Kunar. It was a very volatile region, very mountainous and very tribal. So there were a lot of firefights in the area.
How often? A lot means one every win. How often?
It was roughly 2 to 3 a week, so roughly 12 a month in the region, specifically in the summer months. I was on my last day of a year-long deployment, and we were being replaced by another unit. We were going on my last mission of the year, and we were kind of doing a passover, but the enemy observes everything and this is typically considered a very dangerous time period because they see new units flowing in and they know that the force on the ground will be a little bit less capable because of the transition. Ended up being injured in a roadside bomb blast that led to a close ambush, kind of by a cliffside. Basically, they disabled my vehicle using the roadside bomb and then proceeded to attack us with machine gun fire. Luckily, because of the sheer bravery of my force, I was able to get evacuated to the lead vehicle. And since then, that kind of started my medical evacuation back to the States.
So Ben, describe a scary moment in the service. What country, when was it, circumstance?
Scariest, well, the first one that comes to mind is day one of boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp. That's pretty scary. Another not so fun one was second deployment Helmand. Was a summer deployment, so a little bit more active in the summertime because it's warmer. We had just taken down our patrol base, and we were on what's called a screen line. So we were essentially living out of our vehicles for about 30 days, and we were monitoring a supply route. And there was another patrol base that had been torn down, and they know that we like to go back to places that we've been before. And so we decided, well, our lieutenant decided that was a good idea. And so I'm second vehicle, first vehicle up front. We're on the road that engineers built to this torn down patrol base. Hits an IED, so not very fun to see a truck full of your teammates get blown up right in front of you. I had to get out, sweep up to them, find a secondary IED that was there behind the vehicle, and then get them out of the vehicle safely to the rest of us where they could get treated. And then EOD comes, they blow up the other bomb, and we get the truck out. So that was not a fun day. Pretty memorable, but not fun.
Mikhail, you've described to me what it's like to come down in a helicopter, drop down one of the ropes. Describe the operation. Describe an operation. Think of one in your head right now, where you drop in on a target, go down the rope. How many guys? How fast do you go down? How big's the rope? Give us a description.
Yeah, I'll paint a quick picture. It'll depend a lot on what the mission entails, but going down a fast roping is not very pleasant. The worst experience I've had when I was a specialist, I carried the Pig. A Pig is a M240 Bravo. It's a big machine gun. You have a tripod. You have a lot of ammunition. There's a lot of things. So basically, they'll pick the biggest guy to carry the most weight. And so when you're going down a rope, a fast rope is extremely thick. You cannot put your hand around the rope. You have to have two hands, and you're essentially squeezing in, pushing in. And then you're using your feet to do the same thing. You have gloves. You probably have two pairs of gloves because you're not climbing down the rope, you're sliding down the rope. The idea is to get from the helicopter to the bottom, down the rope to the ground as fast as you can without slipping, without falling. And as soon as you hit the ground, you want to go left or right because the other guy is coming right behind you. There's one person after another. So the idea, it makes sense in most people's head, but it's extremely hard. It's difficult, and injuries do happen just because that's the nature of the game. If the ground is uneven, you're gonna fall. That's gonna trickle effect, and others are gonna probably land on you.
So Harp, describe the gear you're wearing. Typical gear. What are you wearing? What kind of gear and what kind of weapon systems do you have?
Absolutely. So you're wearing a bulletproof type vest. And it's a little bit more than what a police officer probably wears locally because it has plates to stop rifle rounds. That's roughly 30 pounds. You're carrying roughly 15 to 20 pounds of extra ammunition. You're carrying medical equipment so you can react quickly in a first response type situation. You're wearing a helmet as well as carrying typically a rifle. We have nice rifles, but they like to put a lot of very heavy optics or kind of laser systems on there. So all in all, I would say average weight would be at a minimum 65 pounds. And I think when it comes to Mikhail weight, they like to load them up around 100, 105 pounds.
So Ben, give us a story about a medic, an actual story from your time overseas. Tell us about a medic in a dangerous situation.
I don't know that I'm going to have a very good one.
Let's get one from, okay. Mikhail, give us a medic story.
Mikhail's gonna have a good one.
I'll just go back to, I wasn't there for this one, but two of my friends, I wear my bracelet, Brem and Barraza, good friends of mine. Situations arise, and different times you're going to respond in a different way. Fortunately, the training that we have within battalion, Ranger Battalion, and I think a lot of them in Marine Corps and all different units of within the military are up par. A lot of great training, and so the medics are one of the most important, and if not the the most important friends you can have. And the reason being is because sometimes if wind shot or an IED blast goes off or something does happen without a medic around, it's very hard to it's hard to treat someone. But if somebody doesn't have the experience and the training that a medic has, steps will not be taken to be able to preserve life and be able to assist individuals. As it relates to Brem and Barraza, they came in they were clearing a room when I was competing in the Best Ranger competition, and unfortunately, they came in a room where bad guy was sitting with the AK-47. It's a machine gun, and as soon as they came in the room, shots were fired. The second guy in, Brem, was able to respond and shoot back and eliminate the target, but due to where the rounds were taken on the body, neither of them made it, and they both had families. So it's always a difficult situation, but the medical staff is crucial, very important for the training that they receive, and to have them readily available to assist our soldiers.
So one of the missions of Ranger Road is to basically keep connected with people who've suffered these kind of traumatic experiences. And how meaningful that is to them would be of interest to our folks. Ben, talk what it's like about going and visiting a combat vet who's been through the kind of terrible danger you have. And I'm going to look around for questions. If you have a question, Angus, if you could stand up in the front of the room here. If you had a question, just wave your hand and Angus will bring you the mic. Okay, Ben, what's it like to visit a vet like in the hospital afterwards?
Sure. So, like I said, I was involved in that one specific IED blast, that one specific story. That same deployment, I had another friend with a different battalion. He was probably like 25 miles north where I was, and he was involved in a similar accident. He was lead vehicle. That vehicle got hit. The blast was big enough that it actually flipped that, I don't know how much those things weigh, 15-ton, 20-ton vehicle. It actually flipped it, and he was in the turret, so he got thrown around quite a bit, sent back to the States. And he's from Palo Alto originally. So when I got back from my deployment, I came up here and I visited him at the VA, and that's just down the road. And it was not, not a very fun experience, and not very fun to see him. And that was, what he went through irreparably changed him physically, mentally, and emotionally. He fractured his skull, fractured his spine. I think he broke a femur, tore one of his triceps off, among other things. So, he went from being this badass Marine that I knew to having to use a walker, wearing a helmet, and I could see it was great for him to be able to interact with me. The fact that somebody went and visited him, we went and hung out and walked around the VA. He couldn't leave. I went and got him lunch, came back, we had lunch, we were sharing stories, laughing, reminiscing on good times, because we used to hang out, from the time that we knew each other, when we were going through training, and then after that, we would go hang out in San Diego and party and do all kinds of stuff before that deployment. So, seeing that, understanding that, what that did for him and what it's like being in a VA hospital, if you've never been, if you've never seen those guys laid up in a hospital bed, missing legs, not knowing what the rest of their life is going to look like, that was a huge reason why I got involved in Ranger Road and doing this, and understanding, what they do for those veterans as well. So that was a bit of my story for that.
Great. So, Harp, you were in approximately 300 missions in the Middle East. Give us an example of a typical one so people understand what happens in a mission.
Sure, I'll give you an example of a really memorable mission. So one of my big tasks was to build confidence. One of my missions was to build confidence with the Afghan government that we were working with, and the biggest focus was really like protecting schools, specifically schools for girls, because at the time there was a huge lack of education and a lot of animosity towards even the idea of educating women. And for that reason, often girls' schools would be burnt down or destroyed after we built the schools, usually at nighttime. This also provided an opportunity to possibly catch the perpetrators. So the mission really was, hey, we know this is alluring, and we hear a lot of chatter on some of the intelligence kind of intercepts that we get. It looks like this school is being targeted. Maybe if we provide some kind of overwatch to the school in the evenings at nighttime, we can catch the guys who are trying to do it and try to stop them. Obviously, from a personal standpoint, this very much resonated with me. The whole point of being in Afghanistan was to, again, provide opportunity to end the cycle of poverty that was leading people to join the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. And then kind of from a professional standpoint, as a military officer, I was really excited to get the bad guys red-handed. So in this situation, was able to deploy a platoon on top of a mountaintop, utilizing some weapon systems that gave them a lot of distance, and then was also able to put a smaller element closer to the school with some thermal imaging. We spent about 7 nights doing this.
How many people in the platoon? How many in the smaller unit?
Absolutely. So about 30 people in the platoon, about 3 guys in the smaller element. We spent about 7 nights doing this, where we were on for roughly 8 hours at night, and then recuperated and kind of reorganized during the day. Some would call us vampires. It became kind of disheartening because of the investment and the lack of return, but luckily on the 8th night, we did have 2 to 3 guys approach the school with fuel and a clear intent to destroy the school, and we were able to actually work with local forces and arrest them and then interrogate them, because we realized this was part of a larger problem.
Mikhail, what percent of your missions were in at night, and what percent in the daytime?
I'd say 90% are at night. We in battalion work mostly, if not only at night. I do remember a couple of day missions where we would go out, but all the rest were at night. So upwards to 90, if not more.
Describe the night vision gear that you guys use.
Sure. And I think it relates to all of us sitting up here now, but those that haven't looked through or don't know what night vision is, it is attached to your MITch or your helmet, and when it is not dark outside, you're able to tilt it upwards, so it just rests on your head, so it's kind of like a bobblehead, I guess. When it gets dark, you flip them downwards, you turn them on, and you're able to see at night. That is one of the when I was in that was the biggest upper hand, or one of the bigger upper hands that we had, the U.S. forces had, was night vision. We're able to come in at night, quietly, quickly, get the mission done, whatever the mission is, and leave us as quick as possible. We're not there long, but most special ops units, when we go in with a purpose. We know where we're going. If we're going into this building here, we'll have some intelligence as to approximately how many, if we're coming out to capture Billy's the bad guy, we know that Billy's armed, and we know that Billy's probably has 20 to 30 men that are armed assisting him. And so we know we have a game plan pretty much before we go out, and if we're fast roping in, or if we're getting dropped off and then hiking in, that'll happen as well. But night vision is crucial and very important, and gives the U.S. troops a huge upper hand to be able to get the mission done.
So, Harp, you have a couple of degrees. Talk to me about being a veteran at Harvard.
Sure. Like Mikhail, after I got out of the Army, I think the key was to stay really busy. And I also had no idea what I was going to do. So I went to grad school to figure it out, studied business at Columbia and economics at Harvard. Honestly, it was a great transition space because there were several veterans who were doing the exact same thing, studying kind of business or economics, looking at kind of what's next, what's going to give them the fulfillment that they had in the military, in the civilian workforce. Also, it's a great kind of transition period where you have a lot of time to explore what it is to have the freedom to travel on your weekends, to have the freedom to get into strange sports such as sailing. Really just to experience a lot of things that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to growing up or in the military. So for me, being at Harvard was really fulfilling. Additionally, I got to really see kind of the breadth of experiences out there. In the military, generally it's a homogenous population. But when you get to go to graduate school, you're meeting people who come from all walks of life, whether it's investment banking or consulting, or whether it's working in NGOs and kind of international development, or fellow military people, but not always American, often Israeli or other Middle Eastern countries were represented. So very fulfilling experience as a military member at Harvard.
We have a question from the audience.
Our first question is from John Wilcox.
Thanks, Angus.
Thanks for the great flag ceremony at Stag. Really appreciated that.
Yes, good. Flag ceremony was great. The color ceremony.
Thank you. For those of us with boats, I have a boat. How can we help with the sailing activities?
Sign up, talk to Mark Lambros right after this, right here sitting there at this table, round table. Sign up with Mark to put yourself on a schedule, and we'll bring Ranger Road guys out to be on your boat. They can learn about sailing. They can have fun. It's totally, we're having a great time teaching them about sailing out there. They love it. They're very interested in competition, so they like learning, of these things in a fast rate. Ben, describe a day in the life. How long were you in the service? How many missions?
Sure. So I only did 4 years. I think the least of between these two guys. But when you're doing that, you live every single day. It's a long 4 years. So when you're stateside, it's a little bit more boring. You're doing a lot of training. You're in the field a lot, especially when you're in infantry, like I was. But when you're on deployment, it takes you to a little bit of a different place where you just leave everything else behind stateside. So it's like every single day you wake up, your focus is the mission. It's what you're doing. It's your platoon. My second deployment, I was just with a single platoon. It's about 30 dudes on a patrol base in the middle of nowhere.
What country?
Afghanistan, Helmand Province. So we would patrol the Helmand River Valley, and it just is really very simple. And it once you get used to doing that, like my second deployment, I volunteered to stay even longer after the rest of our unit had gone back. I volunteered to stay an extra month because you get used to it. You get into that groove, and most people don't. It's hard to fathom what that's like if you haven't done it. Most people are probably going, wow, that's crazy. Why would you ever do that? And it's like you feel comfortable doing it. And there's some of your boys are still there. You want to be there with them until everybody else leaves. So typical day, it goes something like an 8-hour shift where you get 8 hours to sleep and eat and take care of personal stuff. Another 8 hours, you're going to be standing on post, pulling security for that patrol base that you're on. And another 8 hours, you're the ones running the missions, doing the patrols. So it's anything from a night patrol. It could be quick OP. You could be going all day. I've gone 12 hours in the middle of the day, 120 degrees. It just depends. It's constantly changing. It's dynamic. You got to switch everything up because, like he said, they're always watching. So you cannot be doing the same stuff day in and day out. It keeps you on your toes.
So, Ben, how do you know who's a good guy and a bad guy? You're on patrol. How can you tell?
You don't. You don't know. You never know. Even like we work real closely with the local police and the local army, the Afghan National Army, and the local police, border police, and even within those ranks, you never really know who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. You hear about called blue on green incidents all the time where Afghan National Police or Army end up shooting up our guys because there are Taliban infiltrators, and it's pretty rampant, that problem. So you never really know.
So, Mikhail, you competed in the Best Ranger competition. How many branches of the service compete? Give us a little overview of the competition.
Yeah, quick summary of the Best Ranger competition is it's held once a year, and it's a prestigious competition that we have anybody that is tabbed, which means has a Ranger tab, is able to participate. We've had Marine Recon guys, which is the Special Forces or the individuals from the Marine Corps, EOD guys, Navy, the SEALs. Anybody's able to compete and participate. And it's a two-man team. It's 3 days and 2 nights nonstop. It's essentially an Ironman. And the idea is you do not know what the tasks are going to be put in front of you. You know generally what's going to happen. You're going to have to run, you're going to have to shoot, you're going to have to fight, you're going to have to jump out of an airplane, etc. And this is all
Your standard stuff.
the standard stuff, the normal stuff, yeah. But there's twists to the competition, and the idea is you're a two-man team, and every event has particular points. Some events that are harder, you are able to raise 10 points, and some events that are easier, the maximum points are less. And so you go 3 days, like I mentioned, in 2 nights, and you can stop and rest and sleep and eat and all that, the good stuff. But if you're going to do that, you're probably not going to win. So with that being said, we probably put about 100 to maybe a little bit over 100 miles on our feet from day one to the award ceremony. And there's separators every night. There's a separator. Separator number 1 is the road march, about 20 to 25, sometimes 30 miles. And that's the first night. After you do a full day of various types of competitive events. At night, you are required to run. It's a road march, but you're essentially going to run with a full pack, approximately 25 miles. And
How much does a pack weigh?
It depends. Probably, like was mentioned by Harp previously, anywhere from 35 to 45 pounds for the competition. And if you're going to win, you have to run. And at that separator, half of the team gets eliminated. There's a bus that's following you, and at some point, you're not going to make it. So you get eliminated. And the second eliminator is the land nav. The land nav, you're going to start seeing things, hearing things. You're not eating enough. You're not sleeping enough. You're burning off various body fluids, and people get lost. You start hallucinating. It's difficult. And at that point, another half of the remaining individuals get cut off. And then the remaining teams go into the last day and compete. And again, it's on TV, so you guys can take a look at it. But it varies from shooting guns, throwing tomahawks, climbing rocks, jumping out of an airplane to a specific location, swimming, you name it, pugil stick fights, and it's a fun time.
Another question. Angus Blackwood has another question back there.
Our next question is from Biz, who is also a San Francisco Navy League member.
Biz Obley.
First of all, I just want to thank the guys from the Army and the Marine Corps for your service. Hoorah.
Thank you.
My question's a little offbeat, but I want to know about the females that you served with, and specifically the ones that were in the nurse corps.
Yeah, you want to answer?
Harp.
Sure. So nurses have a very, very dear spot in my heart. After I was injured in 2010, I spent roughly 3 months as an inpatient at Walter Reed, and a majority of my nurses in the nurse corps were female, as well as were second or first lieutenants, so very junior officers, new to the military. One tip or trick I advise everyone is to be extremely polite and considerate to your nurse, because they can very much control the pain and food intake over your stay.
Does this apply to wives as well?
Most likely, correct. So basically, I don't have anything real specific other than I had some incredible nurses who worked tirelessly day and night to take care of me. Not only did they take care of me, but they took care of my parents and my sister during their long kind of stay. And additionally, I kind of saw their kindness really break down barriers. A lot of the trauma and orthopedic surgeons at that time were incredibly busy. male or female. They just didn't have any time for bedside manner or really anything else other than to immediately attack the injury and then move on to the next patient, just because the injury numbers coming out of Afghanistan in 2010 to 2013, the nurses were the ones who did a lot of the support work, a lot of the informational work, a lot of the family and kind of emotional guidance. So just to summarize, I would say that basically nurses were kind of the backbone and foundation of the healthcare experience for most wounded warriors, and they really were instrumental in the recovery of me as well as several of my peers during that period.
Question from the audience.
Our next question is from Gordon Danielson.
Well, first of all, I can't thank you enough for your service. I have a question concerning prosthetics, and the reason I'm asking it is my brother-in-law about 10 years ago lost his leg above the knee. He's an older person. And 5 years ago, approximately, he found a treatment in Australia where they put titanium pegs up in the bone, and then with that, you can attach your machinery. And at that time, I was kind of concerned as to why we weren't doing this, pioneering in this, to take care of our veterans. So I'm curious, I'm assuming now we do this treatment, but are we now making sure that you guys get the state-of-the-art treatments for your injuries?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer that question in kind of two parts. The reason it hit Australia first was just because of some of the clinical regulation hurdles that are primarily existent here in the U.S. I think that's generally for our well-being, but we are slow to bring these things downstream. It hit in Australia very early on, and I actually know of people who travel to Australia to get the surgery. Often, because of the lack of testing, they've had some really negative outcomes. That being said, here in the U.S., right now, they are testing with that technology at Walter Reed, and I would say from my perspective, I've been super fortunate in terms of prosthetic care, and I would say that my peers who were injured in the war have also had really state-of-the-art experiences in terms of both prosthetics as well as kind of the prosthetists, so the enablers to those prosthetics. So all in all, I'm confident in saying that we are getting state-of-the-art care. There are hurdles, and healthcare in this country is not a smooth process. And I would say when we compare our wounded veterans, specifically war-wounded veterans, to the regular population, we're probably a lot more privileged in kind of our access and opportunities for healthcare.
Well, Mel, I want to say that we all appreciate your service. Mikhail, Ben, Harp, we all recognize what you've gone through and that you've served our country in the most noble fashion, and we very, very, very much appreciate it. And thank you for being guests at the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
And I just wanted to say one more thing. We're very grateful for St. Francis Yacht Club, for Ron, for Mark, for everybody stepping up and helping our veteran community. Again, nothing but positive reinforcement from you guys, and that goes a long way. I go back and I tell all the vets on how supportive you guys are. Everywhere I come in, shaking my hand and telling me thank you for my service. And I'm grateful for all of you guys recognizing that and assisting and making things easier for our vets. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And with that, the luncheon is adjourned. Thanks, man. Good on you, Harp. See you, buddy.